Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending when you're based. We've got a couple more minutes and then we'll kick off the webinar. So hang tight for a couple of minutes. And the recording's on. Oh, I forget. All righty then, I think we'll kick off again. Welcome to the release webinar for release 2.26. I look forward to getting into it. So we appreciate that you've taken the time, regardless of your time zone. My name's Lachlan and I'm the Customer Success Manager based in Sydney, Australia. We have a packed agenda for you with lots of new functionality, and my colleague Kim will guide you through that over the next 30 minutes.
Thanks, Lachlan. My name's Kim Buoy. I'm one of the senior business consultants in the customer success team based in Australia. I'll be providing context about some of the new features that are part of the 2.26 release. Hope you're doing well, and back to you, Lachlan.
Thanks, Kim. So if you just want to move to the next slide, please, Kim. Thank you very much. As part of our release management, we want you to have the best starting point when entering the testing phase of the release. The webinar is an important component of the release process. Regardless of your knowledge and prior experience with release management, obviously the webinar is there to share you with some of the features in the release that are coming up today. A couple of housekeeping things to work through today. Obviously the webinar will be available in TravelOperations along with the release notes. All the content that you'll be seeing today will be in the release notes. We do have the ability for a Q&A session, so please obviously click on the Q&A component and ask any questions. However, if you wish to keep them, you can obviously then follow up with your primary business consultant. They will be able to assist you with any questions you may have directly related to your requirements. Okay, just moving to the agenda. We'll have the versions in this release. We'll talk about that shortly. There'll be a walkthrough of some of the new functionality. We'll look at new features and highlights, some of the integrations, the travel sales order, reconciliation and finance, and then invoice documentation, followed by the Q&A session at the end. So in this release, it contains two packages, a minimum of two packages. So there's an enterprise package where you will find all the new features, which the enterprise is the travel operations solution. And there's also the Microsoft updates, which as you can see there is 10.0.42. So it is the customer's responsibility to review the list and have a high level understanding of them. There could be functionality that is valuable for you or needs your attention. You'll be able to find more detailed information regarding travel operations and the Microsoft updates in the release notes in Travel Docs. Or as I mentioned earlier, reach out to your business consultant. They'll be only too happy to help and answer any questions you may have. Let's start with the first category, Kim. Over to you.
Thanks, Lachlan. The intention of the webinar is to provide a quick overview of the release, highlighting features that are relevant for most users of Enterprise, as well as some config tips. Generally, your customer success consultant will also go through in detail with you directly to highlight specific items that are interesting for your implementation. We'll start with some of the more significant items as our first area of focus for release 2.26. In this release, you might have noticed that the official release notes documentation is much longer than the usual release. This is because we've made some significant changes in a few modules that you may not be aware of, or you might just want to take it on board. The areas are making Microsoft's invoice capture able to be used for travel-specific fields, significant enhancements to the group travel functionality, and a new update that caters to charter flights. I'll discuss these in the following slides. Invoice capture is a standard Power App provided by Microsoft that allows you to use OCR mapping and AI learning to process the content of invoices or documents and apply them in D365 Finance. We have enhanced the standard functionality by adding our unique travel identifiers, including document or ticket number, PNR, confirmation number, and internal VCC, which feed into our customized travel-specific workspace that uses vendor transactions as a data source. The new travel pending invoices workspace allows you to approve the matches. You can also configure whether you want to have the invoice as not approved until the invoice gets matched, meaning that you can hold off on paying the invoice until you receive the documentation from the vendor. You have the option of attaching the PDF invoice automatically to the vendor transaction, which are matched using the unique identifiers that I was discussing before. Keeping these records might be a requirement depending on your local regulations to keep for audit purposes. Currently, this functionality is behind a configuration key, but if you're interested in a demo or would like to implement, please reach out to us to discuss it. In the near future, we are planning to enhance this functionality even further, allowing you to process commission for billbacks and pay directs directly to the sales order that raised them in originally from scans from your suppliers. Next, this release contains over 20 enhancements to the travel group and allotment module in TravelOps Enterprise. It's been one of our main focuses over the past few months. If you're not aware of it already, this module is fully integrated to D365 Finance and enables the ability to manage package tours with mandatory allotment items and option add-on items. Sales and costs will be linked to the same financial dimension, allowing the agent to drill down and in detail provide financial feedback. It allows the ability to mix a variety of products with or without allotment in a tour. If you're interested in seeing how it works or it is suitable to your travel agency, please again, just reach out to us for a demo. This release also comes with enhanced functionality in the flight module that allows quoting and invoicing for use by chartered companies for airline flights and contracts. The highlights of these features includes the configuration of locations, aircraft types and pilots, automatic calculation of estimated flight times, distances, and costs. Flexible fees can be configured with automatic calculations, including handling, passenger, and takeoff fees. Documentation creation is catered for and handled, including quotes, confirmation, prepayment, and invoice documents. The module is integrated with your standard travel sales orders. So once a charter has passed from the flight module to a sales order, it is able to use all the existing functionality that you'll be familiar with. As an example, invoices, customer statements, and reconciliations. This is a very high-level overview. If this is of interest, again, reach out to us. Okay, next we're going to move on to integration. We'll discuss a new batch job that resends Azure Service Bus messages if there was an error on initial sending, the ability to associate booking channel at a sales line level in the XML, and the logging of errors on delayed invoicing. Okay, this enhancement is relevant for those implementations that have an integration with the Azure Service Bus. You may or may not be aware of this, but if your booking integration flow is via the Azure Service Bus, once a booking is imported, a message is sent back to the source that contains information that includes the status and what sales order number was allocated to the booking. There were times where the message failed to be sent. You can see this in the screenshot below, where the error column is populated with a tick. We've created a new batch job that facilitates the resend if it had an error on the initial send. The batch job is located in Travel Periodic Azure Service Bus integration, and then resend Azure Service Bus integration info. Select the relevant XML integration and input a start and end date to filter on what errored XML needs to be resent. This will ensure that your front-end booking tool will always be up to date with the trailer statuses, even if there was a connection issue at one point in time. In the next change relating to our XML schema, we have added the functionality to associate a booking channel at the sales line level. This could be used in a scenario where in the XML, you might have different booking channel sources for different products. Previously, you were only able to associate booking channels at the header level of an XML. To allow the input of this in your XML, you'll need to update the XML schema to the latest version. Please refer to our release notes section on TravelDocs to find our enterprise templates to download the latest version of the XML schema. It is a good idea to update your schema prior to testing to ensure that you're up to date with the latest XML settings. Please discuss this with your customer success consultant if you need advice on updating your schema. And one of the features which you might not be aware of that is commonly used when open sales orders need to be invoiced manually is the delayed invoice queue. In short, from the travel sales order grid screen, you have the ability to multi-select sales orders to invoice them in bulk by sending them to the delayed invoice queue. Find this on the All Travel Sales Order screen in the ribbon underneath Administration, Invoiced Delayed. You can see that in the left-hand screenshot. Once there, you can process the invoicing run of whatever has been placed in the queue periodically in batch using the delayed invoice in batch job, rather than individually invoicing them and waiting for the invoice prompts and generation to happen on your screen. Using this should basically save you time. The new functionality here is, previously the sales order if the sales order had a validation error on invoicing, the invoice error did not display. This enhancement in this release is that we now populate the info log for the job. So it will display the invoice errors, giving you the ability to fix any validation errors before you attempted to invoice them again. So you can see those errors in the screenshot on the right. And next up, we'll cover a few topics that relate to the sales order. We'll discuss enhancements relating to validation in the travel section, including blocking at the item level, validation of credit card digit length for payment provider transactions, and validation available at the vendor level, and the ability to update expiry dates on credit card tokens from the travel integration. This first change gives you the option to block specific items, so it's not possible to invoice them. You'll be able to find this configuration underneath release products in the travel setup section. You'll find the blocked parameter. You can see that in the bottom screenshot. We recommend only configuring this on items which you would never want to be able to be invoiced. We recommend to update this on the missing item, which is used if a trailer references a product which cannot be found in enterprise at the time of import. Usually the correct action if you receive the missing item in a sales order would be to create the product that couldn't be found in enterprise, then use the copy and new product function to recreate that sales line and push it to your newly created item. This enhancement removes the chance that you'll accidentally invoice that missing item. Next, we've also added the additional validation in the credit card area. You can configure a default credit card length configurable on the credit card company level. As an example, you might want to configure the specific digit length for each different credit card company like Amex and Visa. You can see the credit card minimum length in the bottom right-hand corner. This validation only triggers if a credit card company is configured with the process through payment gateway selection, and the credit card is configured as a payment gateway charge. The benefit to this is that you'll receive the error upfront before the sales order attempts to be invoiced or charged via the payment gateway. The MC, or miscellaneous charge, and also the pay remark have been updated in relation to how they work with credit card tokens. You can populate this remark with a credit card token and expiry dates, as you can see in that first screenshot. If this expiry date is different to what is found in the credit card token table currently, it will now be updated when that card is read via the scanner import. Note that this will not create a card if the card does not exist already. And small validation, which is configurable at the vendor level. When the vendor is used on the sales order line, you now have the option to select it if it will be stopped for invoicing if certain values aren't input on the sales line. You have the option of having validation on confirmation number, document number, PNR, or internal CC VCC. The reason you might do this is to help ensure that the source data contains the right references to make reconciliation easier when you get to that part in the future. This can force a sales order to be corrected at the source before invoicing, so you don't meet the data issues at the point of doing the reconciliation. And speaking of reconciliation, let's review the features that relate to the rec and finance. We'll discuss a few vendor side enhancements that touch upon fixing dimensions, due dates, write-offs, and allowing the ability to move a transaction from one reconciliation to another. And on the finance side, exchange rate validation, the reduction of journals being created for intercompany customer postings, and enhancements to the account statement. This new feature will allow you to write off from the vendor transaction screen. You'll need to configure an allowed write-off limit on the vendor to have the ability to access this functionality, which you can see in the top right-hand screenshot. When you write off, you have the option to select a journal name and a GL code that you would like the amount to be written off to, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. Traditionally, that GL code should be an expense type. This function will automatically settle the written off line against the new write-off journal in vendor transactions, so you don't need to offset them against each other manually later on. The benefit of this is that you don't need to manually create and post a journal and settle them afterwards, saving you time. You can also now fix the dimensions from the vendor transaction screen. Find the new option underneath the travel menu and find the Fix Vendor Dimensions button. Use this prompt and input the amended dimensions, and it will post an adjustment to the sales line just for the cost side via a credit note and re-invoice the original sales order line, which are invoiced in separate invoice numbers. You can use the dimensions button to amend more dimensions above and beyond the department and employee, which are the only ones shown on the form by default, which you can see in the right-hand screenshot. You'll need to add a reason code and a description as to why you needed to amend the dimensions on the original sales line. This enhancement should save you time when you need to fix the dimensions on the sales line on the vendor transaction, just saving you creating the lines manually. The standard Microsoft functionality to update due dates on vendor transactions requires you to log into a second screen and process the changes one by one. We've added the ability to select from the grid and process a due date change in bulk. This scenario where you need to update the vendor transaction due dates might come up in the BSP or ARC reconciliation process, where the tickets were invoiced outside of the period that the BSP hot files recognize them in, and they need to be amended to get them falling into the correct reconciliation bucket. It's important that you filter the vendor transactions grid as much as possible prior to running this function to ensure the optimal performance. Select or tick the transactions that you would like to be updated, then select Update Due Date within the Travel menu dropdown. You can see the screenshot on the left, which shows you the parameters of the update. These last few functions that I've gone through are functions that give you the ability to update data. If it's something that you don't want your users to have access to, you have the ability to hide these menus using the hide functions travel parameters screen, which you can see on the right. Otherwise, you can control access via the security config to provide access to a certain level of users. In the vendor reconciliation, we've added a new feature that allows you to reconcile transactions against other vendors, apart from the one you loaded the statement on. To do this, you can run a rematch against the other specified vendor, which you can find underneath the rematch menu. Select the other vendor to be rematched against. If it finds a match in the selected vendor, it will move the transaction to a new bucket called Matched Different Vendor. From this bucket, you can then highlight the specified transactions and run the new discrepancies menu item called Fix Vendor, Different Vendor, which will reverse the original sales order line and create a new sales order line with the newly allocated vendor. It will automatically suppress both lines and invoice them. It will move the file transaction from matched different vendor to matched. This will save you time and the need to manually journal transactions that have ended up on a different vendor in the sales order as to the vendor statement in the reconciliation. Okay, this enhancement relates to the TravelOps exchange rate import job. We've created a new way to ensure that the exchange rate imported into the system aren't outside of a configurable fluctuation range before the import. This can combat if the source of your exchange rate isn't 100% reliable. For this validation to be in place, it needs to be set up at the currency pair level with fluctuation percentage rates. If an exchange rate that is being imported is outside of the rate, it's placed in a temporary table for review, and previous exchange rates will continue to be used in the sales order. See the exchange rate validation review table at the bottom of this screenshot. If an exchange rate pair ends up in this state, the rate will be in this table until it is reviewed by a user and published. An email will be sent out listing all currency pairs that were imported that were outside the fluctuation rate. There's a data entity relating to the currency exchange rate available if you would like to import these values in bulk. In terms of configuration, you just need to configure the email address that should receive the notification in the travel parameters, as you can see on the right there. And similar to the enhancement in the last release on the vendor side of intercompany journals, we have introduced a parameter that, when enabled, removes the extra journal lines to the internal intercompany vendor in the home entity where the booking was made. Usually there are postings in and out of this customer, and these will be removed if this toggle is turned on. It's important to ensure that the credit card company codes are the same in the selling as well as the target legal entity. Otherwise, no match will be found and the posting will fail. The benefit to turning this on will be the creation of less journal lines and therefore less space taken up on your database. The configurable CSV statement extract for the account statement is now available to be exported in Excel. Now that you can export the statement in Excel, this has opened up the possibility to configure multiple tabs with different data as required by your customers in their statement. Please read through the release notes on details about how to configure this at a customer level. And next up, we'll cover a few topics that relate to invoice documentation. We'll discuss enhancements, including the addition of icons to all product categories, a new configuration available to email credit notes differently to invoices, and a job which periodically archives invoices and statements. Just a quick update on this one. We've added icons to all the product categories so that in the sales order and on the invoice, it will be populated with a relevant pictorial representation. Your enterprise may be configured to send out emails to your customers on invoicing. we've now added the new ability to send a different email template if the invoice amount is less than 0. In effect, you have the ability to configure a different email address, a different email text when there is a credit note. The benefit of this is you can communicate more clearly to the customer if there's a different email required to be sent in this scenario, which wasn't possible previously. Find the new menu underneath System Administration, Setup, Email, Email Parameters, Credit Note. This can refer to an organization email template that's set up specifically with subject and email body content relating to what you would like to communicate when you send a credit note to your customer, as you can see on the right-hand side screenshot. In the last release, we created the ability to archive invoices and statements to blob storage or SharePoint. This has been enhanced further to allow you to configure the system not to archive the documents at the time of document generation, but to delay the archive activity and split the work into multiple queues, which can help from a performance perspective. Being able to run the archiving process not every time something gets invoiced, but in a batch at set periods of time and in parallel. See below the items in the screenshot that have been sent to the delayed document archive queue, ready to be processed once the delayed document archiving in batch job runs. In terms of configuration, if you already have document archiving set up, you'll just need to configure the amount of delayed invoice queues that you would like to run in parallel. You can find the setting in TravelOperations, then configure the delayed document archiving batch job at a recurrence that makes sense. In effect, how often would you like the documents to be pushed to SharePoint or Blob to archive? And that's everything for today. So I'll just hand back to Lachlan to check if we have any questions.
Thanks, Kim. I appreciate the updates there. No questions at this stage. So obviously for people who do have questions, as mentioned earlier, please reach out to the customer success team. They'll be able to help facilitate that for you. As I said, thank you everyone for joining today's session. The webinar and the presentation will be uploaded to TravelDocs in the next 24 to 48 hours, so you'll have access to it and be able to download it from the TravelDocs environment. Thank you very much for everyone attending, and good luck with the release 2.26. Thank you and good day.